Welcome guys to the mini bike build part 2. If you saw the first video, you will have watched me hobcobble my way through a frame. It's all tacked together. We are ready to get some wheels on it, but in order to get wheels on it, we need to build the rear swing arm and build the front fork system. So basically, we're making this thing into a rolling frame. That's what we are doing in this video. So, with that being said, let's get right into it. Let's get into So, first we're going to work on the front. Why? Because I think it might be easier, but it also might be harder. I don't know. We're going to work on the front. So you can see here, I got this square tubing. And as my nephew was very gracious to point out to me, it should be a circle, because it's going to pivot. Hold your horsies. I got some flat stock. What I'm going to do here, you can see, with the X's I'm actually going to drill holes in that. I'm going to drill the holes before I cut it. It's easier to drill the holes in the bigger piece. Drill holes, then I'm going to cut those out. We're going to weld them to the top and to the bottom. And the holes we're going to drill, where we'll be able to insert these bearings. So then we'll have a bearing here, a bearing here. Then I have to build, I guess it's a triple tree is what I'm doing, where the shocks are going to run up here. I got to fabricate the plate for here, fabricate the plate for here, and then run that down. I don't know what I'm doing, but we're going to get this part done first because that's pretty simple. So let's drill some holes, cut some steel. Yeah, I've never used a drill bit like that. Bought that specifically for this project, and that was pretty intense. But it cut very nicely. Okay, so besides the fact that it's scalding hot, what's really cool, those hole saws are pretty sweet. This just fits ever so beautifully in there. Look at that. It doesn't even fall out. So what I'm going to do, because I want everything to line up, and I know that I'm not very good at metal fab, I'm going to drop that in there. We'll sink this one up through the bottom, and then we'll tighten the bolt to make sure that everything's lined up, and then we'll tack weld this top on, and everything should stay straight, and then we'll pull everything out, the bearings and everything, before we actually fully weld it. But doing it this way should at least make sure that everything is straight. Like that, see? And then I'll tack it, and then obviously later on, if I need to move it when we get everything together, I can do that. But so I figured that'd be the easy part, and now we got the hard part. I gotta figure out how wide this triple tree needs to be. If I'm saying it wrong, I'm saying it wrong. But I need to figure out how wide this triple tree needs to be and how long. Obviously, I'm going to want it to run to here, because I'll be halfway through my tire. And here's what I have off of the parts bike. Yeah, I'm going to have to extend these too, which I knew about, and then do some plates and stuff. Math, right? Yeah. First of all, I guess let's, at the minimum, figure out how wide this thing's going to have to be, because I don't even know on that one. Why don't you guys just watch me try to figure this out, because I bet you it's going to be a good time. Figure out how tall I need these forks to be. So I just took a straight ruler, line this up to the table. I went just a smidge past the table, and then I'm running up here reading the measurements that are there. I don't know if that's how we're gonna do it, but I'm coming up with 22 3/4, and then I'll tell me what I gotta add to my existing shock things. And then we're gonna do that first. I wanna get those extended first. I think that makes the most logical sense. So my shocks are currently 21. I need them to be 22 3/4, so I need to add 1 3/4 inch to each one. Yeah, that Vevor chop saw that you just saw me using, that bandsaw, is crap. Don't buy one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these little pieces of tubing, I'm going to shove them into there, and then I will put these pieces I just cut on top, and then you can see I got holes drilled in here. So I think it's called plug weld, so then I can fill that with weld also, and then I'll have a butt joint and that plug weld to help hold it all stable. So let's do that. So I've seen uglier. This is after they've been grinded and sanded. I think they'll work. So now what we gotta do is we gotta feed these through, because this will be the bottom plate. So what I'm gonna do is, you can hopefully see the drawing on there, the circle. So I gotta put a hole here, here, and then in the center. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna drill pilot holes in this plate first, and then I'll take those pilot holes, transfer them to another plate, and then I will actually cut the holes out. That way I know that everything is going to line up perfectly, hopefully, ideally, and so let's bring this over the drill press and then start drilling. Alright, so my plates are now cut out. Now this one, this is the top. All I did is I cut halfway through on where those shocks are going to come through, just for alignment. That's all the reason I did that. So we're going to see now if everything lines up and if everything works. I'm still missing the axle bolt that is on its way, but I should still be able to at least figure out if this is going to remotely work. Now, does my tire fit? It looks like it. So let me explain to you where we're at and what we need right now. So this is kind of the setup that we got going on here. Now I'm gonna have to cut another plate, just kind of stick in here, just as a filler for that bearing, so that bearing's not protruding way out here. Not so much a problem on the bottom, but it will be on the top. So I'm gonna put a plate in here, plate in there, weld those. It will strengthen it up a little bit. Now I would like to actually attach the tire before I weld everything, but I want to make sure that it works before I start welding everything like that. I also realized that because of where this sits and the angle of this, there's going to, I'm hoping I have enough of a turn radius. That might be an issue. That's kind of the biggest thing that I'm concerned about at the moment. But while I'm waiting for that axle to arrive before I get that buttoned all up right there. Oh, and I need a new neck bolt, because this is the third one I bought and I need it to be like 9 inches, not 8 inches. I'm going to drill some more holes in this, cut this out so I can weld that in there. I also have to add the radiuses onto these two pieces of steel, and then I can weld it all together. So I will do all of this, and I'll see you back when I have that bolt, hopefully tomorrow. Okay, so here's what we got. So I got these all finished up. As you can see, I got that second plate on there. To add the second plate, I did the same thing as I did extending the forks. I just did some plug welds, and then I welded the sides here. But that's all. We radiused the edges. I got those. I got my new neck bolt. That should be long enough. Axles also came in, so that should be good. So we should be ready to put this thing actually together and weld this whole triple tree system together. I'm going to lay that out, do that, and then make sure that the axle actually works. And after having to redo this thing, getting mad, cutting things apart, things not working out, here we are right here. So as you can see, it does work. Now the problem, this bolt too long, gonna trim that up, but I don't have enough threads here. We'll have to make some spacers there, but it bottoms out pretty quickly on the turn, so it doesn't have a super high turn radius because of this right here. So I'm gonna actually notch this a little bit to give it more clearance. I'd rather it hit this 1/4 inch up here, then right here, that'll give me a little more turning. But it looks good. So we need the spacers for the axles. I need 4 of them. This is gonna be terrible because I'm gonna try to cut this with the grinder. It's very small. I hope I don't screw this up. So now, if you didn't know, cutting the threads off this is going to mess up my threads, but But if you take a bolt and stick it this way and then cut the threads, when you take that bolt off, it'll actually fix them. So we're gonna cut an inch off this bolt just because I don't need it hanging out that far in the front. It's gonna be hot. It's actually not hot. All right. Beautiful. So after modifying my modifications that I already modified, bam, there is the tacked up results. So I did get those little notches in there, which now does allow it to give a little more turn radius. If that's not enough, I will actually just take this, lop this off, and put some plate in there. I got the spacers in for the wheels, cut that down. There we go. That should be it for the front for right now. And the worst part is I did the front first, hoping that it would be easy, and that took me 6 hours. So now we're gonna go and start working on this rear swing arm. Okay, so for the rear swing arm, I think what I'm gonna do is, if you remember, I bought this for a parts bike. I want this section right here for the rear swing arm, so I can put the tire actually right here. So I'll cut up in here, cut up in here, back there and there, and then that'll give me the part for my tire. Problem is I have all this stuff in the way. So I think it's time to just tear this bike down and take off the parts that I want, and then I'll have access to the metal that I need, and so on and so forth. So let's tear this thing down so we can then build it. The plan for the rear swing arm is I'm going to take 2 pieces of tubing, put them in there, okay? And then I will have my pivot point be somewhere in here. The little pivot and the shock will come off here to here. But now it's going to have to come here, out, and then kind of expand around to fit around the tire. So I'm going to cut all this out, and then use this portion here, and then take some of this square tubing and mount it like that. That's the plan. Should take all of 15 minutes. So after what I'm going to describe to you as a awful long time, this is all we have left, which is actually perfect. I was able to get it to the wheel, will fit inside. It's beautiful. That T right there is where we're going to put the axle. It works great. So now what I'm going to figure out, I'm going to want to do a plate at the top of here, and that's what I'm going to weld. I'll attach the shock to. I'm going to have to cut some of this out here so that this can sit up in here, and then the shock should mount something like that. That fun stuff. If this goes as easy as what it's going right now, screw that front end, because this has been so much better, and now that I said that, I just know I screwed up big time. Alright, so I trimmed these so that they match. There's a 45-degree angle on them because that's just what happened when I put this side together. I matched on that side. It's there. So these are the pieces that are going to infill in. I have a 1/2-inch spacer in here of wood to allow for that pivot, right? So when that moves, it should give it clearance. Now, I don't know anything about geometry, right? I don't know angles. I don't know all this stuff. I don't know suspension. But I don't think you want your shock to sit straight. I think you want your shock to kind of have an angle. I'm gonna eyeball where I think it'll sit, right? So I think that the shock will sit about right there, right? I'm trying to tuck it as much as I can. I don't want to tuck it too much. So I'm gonna mark off where I think it'll end up sitting. Something like that, I think. Straighten this all out, trace onto these 2 back pieces, cut those out, weld those on, and that should be enough to then drill the holes and line everything up. Alright, so sorry about the noise, but you are directly in front of the furnace. It's cold outside. Now, I need to drill the holes, I think, first for that pivot point on the backs. So, I'm going to use the drill press table, set up a jig, so that hopefully I drill those holes exactly in the same spots, so then I can transfer those holes over onto the bike frame itself, and then drill those holes. That's what we're going to attempt to do here, and not screw this up. So now I'm using the one that I just drilled in the drill press Got my lines all centered up. I'm gonna use this as a guide to drill through this one because I couldn't quite get this one on the drill press very easily. Should now be able to just see if everything lines up well enough that I can then start doing some cuts. Just getting all these bushings in and see how this works out. Fun fact, these are actually go-kart leaf spring bushings. I don't know if that is a fun fact, but it's fun enough for me to tell you. Moment of truth if this actually worked out or not. Alright, and my bushings are too dang big and too thick. That's what I was actually really afraid of also. This has been problem after problem. But what I can do is I can just cut all the reveal off of one of these and it actually is going to fit pretty smoothly. Bam! That all worked. I'll allow that to pivot. Heck yeah. I don't know how I got so stinking lucky, but that worked. Alright, now I can figure out the placement, my shop, and all that fun stuff. Whew. Alright, I am absolutely filthy and disgusting looking, but here's what we got. So it's gonna pivot here. Obviously, this should have been longer. Because we had that big neck there from the other one. So I'm gonna plate the top and I'll plate the bottom, and then it'll be absolutely strong. So I'll tack weld these on right now, and then the plate that I put on the top will also be the plate that I mount the strut to, and I'll go from there to there. So we're gonna tack this on, get that plate made, tack that plate on, make the mount for the struts, get those tacked on, drill the holes for the axle, get the wheel mounted, and then then we're rolling. It should only take me 64 days. This kind of gives us our first look at what this thing's going to actually look like. It does now pivot right here like I wanted it to. So we're going to build these tabs. Alright, so I was just about to start cutting the tabs for the shock mount right here when I discovered what is probably the biggest problem that I've made so far. So I don't think with this spacing, I don't think it'll allow me to get a sprocket on and then the bolt heads, I think they'll hit this frame. The sprocket goes on this side, and then on this side has that disc for the brake, and I think we're going to run into the same problems. I won't have space for the bolts. What I think I'm going to do is I'm going to right now get the sprocket and the disc off of the other stuff, use over there, get them mounted on here, and then see if they fit, which I don't think they will. And then we will have to modify that back end, which I have to modify anyway, because my axle bolt is actually not long enough, and if we have to widen this thing, it's going to make it even worse, which so I could run into even more problems. Okay, we'll put this on and we'll see where we're at. So I just spent the last 2 hours trying to get the sprocket and the disc to fit on this wheel, however you want to call it. And guess what? I got the sprocket to work, but the disc brake won't work. So I'm going to order a new one. And the sizes I find don't seem very promising. Just cleaned up those threads because this should fit. This should. After hours, this should fit. I also had to find bolts that would work for this. I thought, when I came out here today, I thought I gotta build 4 brackets, tack weld them on, and I get to mess around on this thing. Well, hours later, no. Still trying to figure this thing out. But we now have the sprocket on after 2 hours. So I've got the modified, not going to be able to use disc, rotor, brake, whatever on. Got the sprocket on. We're going to see how screwed I really am. The answer is very, because it does not even closely fit. cut that plate that I tack welded on, cut this apart, and then what I'll do is I'll actually get this thing installed on the swing arm, and then I'll weld it back on there. So So because we had to add the spacers to allow for the problems we had and have to now widen the back rear swing arm, my bolt's not long enough. And I've already bought multiple bolts trying to make this thing work. These are special ordered bolts that I did. So what we're gonna do is this. So I'm gonna notch out, not back here, I'm gonna notch this, run the notch all the way up here, and then I'm gonna take some flat plate, we're gonna bend it in the vise, and then we'll tack weld it in there. What that'll do is that'll give me a lot more room for that. And realistically, I think it'll either make it as strong or stronger because of the fact that A, this is thicker than what's already in there, and B, you don't have that big hollow spot. So this is my favorite part of welding in the winter. So if you're thinking to yourself, wow, that looks literally the exact as it did a few hours ago, I would say you're wrong, because this is new. So it's that, you got your clearance now, much better, more straighter, and I had the bottom plate tacked on. So we are now not as far as we were. We are just a little bit ahead, but now we can work on getting those tabs for the shock mounts. Alright, she's all tacked together. Now, I was going to do handlebars in this video, but I need new risers because the risers off of that parts bike just weren't right. So I'm going to order new ones of those. But for the meantime, I'm going to get this thing off of here and put this thing on its own weight and see how it looks, feels, all that fun stuff. Just well with that, don't grab there. I guess golly gee, she weighs about 875. Oh, let's see how she does with the fat man on her. Ooh, bouncy, bouncy. I think I need more of a stiffer shock. Whee! Well, this has been a lot of fun. I think we need to take this thing, see how it handles. I'm gonna go bring it down and ride it down some hills. So it does have like a 20-foot turn radius. You can see the tracks. So I am gonna have to cut into the frame, put some new plate and make it so you can actually move the handlebars. But we're gonna try it on the more steeper hill, see if I can get more speed and go a little farther. She rolled beautifully, by the way. It balanced really well. That was a concern of mine, was the balancing. And the suspension felt really good. This might be a little loose. I might have to upgrade to a little bit of a heavier duty shock, which is actually why I had this anyway, because I did upgrade it on the Barber Jeep. So I may have to do that. The steering, I'm going to modify. Like I said, I said it earlier in this video. It's been a long time. She rolled and she works really well. I'm not going to show you guys all the welding because I think we're about to the point where I can pretty much final weld all this together, and then so that'll be a few hours of welding, but that's going to be it for this video. We did the front suspension, we did the back suspension, and the next video we're going to put a motor in it and the handlebars. I don't know if we'll get it running because there's a lot of wiring I got to figure out. We'll at least get that in, and next video this thing will be basically fully welded. Thanks for watching. See you guys next time.